recording. So today we want to just have a look at the ethical issues in IT or in ICT and how we can be guided on these issues. We've already seen quite a bit of them, especially when we looked at our assignment on ethical issues that are rising up in our current times. We especially looked at artificial intelligence, misinformation, data privacy, and so on and so forth. So when we look at ICT in its entirety, we see that ethical issues do arise out of it, and especially because we are dealing with information, we're dealing with data, which data normally belongs to an individual. For example, right now I am recording you in this class, and if I decide to share this information, I'm actually sharing people's data. Yeah, I'm first of all sharing content which comes from me, a lecturer of UMU, and this content in actual sense belongs to UMU itself. So if I decide to share it with somebody outside of UMU, then there is an issue of information privacy, or in other situations also a question of copyright, intellectual property rights. Who does this data belong to? This recording that we are making right now, who does it belong to? So now when we come to ICT, we normally just talk about data and so on and so forth. We talk about designing systems and all these things, designing our data structures, but we don't actually think about the ethical perspective of things. And we also don't realize the level of responsibility, how big a responsibility we hold as ICT professionals within an organization. So we want to understand this issue of information privacy and how we can improve privacy of information that we are responsible for. We also want to understand issues of censorship. Yeah. Things where we should know where our boundaries lie. What are our boundaries as ICT professionals, and also as ICT users, and to guide users on where our boundaries lie. We also want to look at the issues of the digital divide. Now, some of you who may have looked at the area of ICT, that is ICT for development, you've seen the term digital divide. And even in some situations, you will find where certain issues which deontologically say we shouldn't use pirated software. There are others who argue that it is unethical. It is unethical for some of these big ICT organizations like Microsoft to charge licenses to poor nations, poor economies. Why? Because they are increasing on the digital divide, lack of access because you can't afford. And yet now we actually see it's actually right to have access to information, and that ICT is one of the things that gives access to information. But how do you have it if the tools we're supposed to use are so heavily licensed and you can't afford? So that increases on the digital divide. You'll also have noticed things like electronic publishing. You wish to access certain information, you wish to publish certain information, but you can't because you can't afford. Yeah. things like that. Then we also have things like green computing. Maybe you had an ICT department, you buy computers, but you don't consider situations of how do you dispose of those ICT devices which affect the environment. Okay. Okay, let's look briefly at privacy issues. Now, already many of you have encountered issues of privacy within ICT. In your organizations, you hold systems, you have systems that you use, you collect employees' information, maybe you also collect your customers' information, details. Then the question of who can access this information, okay? Who can access this information? Consider maybe the telecommunication providers. I'm sure many of them can access most of our communication information. For example, can MTN see my text messages? Or UTL, or also rather Airtel, can they access my text messages? Is it possible for WhatsApp, for example, to keep record of my communication to different people? Is it possible for them to access? Most likely, yes, they can. Just like also you, within your organizations, you can access certain information. Maybe you can access the payroll. Maybe you can access the payroll. Maybe you can access individual employee information within the department, the HR department. Maybe you can access, and maybe others can have access to it. So that issue of privacy. On top of that, leaving the organization but moving further into our global ICT use, we have social networking sites which collect information and collect our personal information, and maybe they also collect information. Many of us are now using social networking sites even for business. Now, the issue of privacy. Yeah, how do we protect that data? And this is where our ICT policies come in to ensure protection of this data. Okay, protection of this data. Especially we have the organization or your corporation has your corporate organization has a mandate to protect, and you as ICT, you have that responsibility of not just protecting, but guiding even management on how to protect this information. Should a third party access it, then they may be liable to a lawsuit or anything like that. Because it's an ethical issue, but it's also a legal issue at the same time. So you have issues which are ethical, not just ethical, but also legal issues. Now, how do we protect this data? We find things like acceptable use policy. Now, this is where in an ICT policy, you set up a policy or policies which specify to those who are going to use your ICT systems and devices, that they must have a certain level of respect for or protection of certain information, either or whatever data the organization keeps. And this policy must be adhered to. So, for example, when a new employee comes into an organization, they are handed such policies and they are required to read through. They are also supposed to be given awareness training on why do we have this policy, how do we protect it, and so on and so forth. And they are supposed to also sign against it. They're supposed to comply. But in case they do not, there should be consequences that follow any breach of this policy. Yeah? So that's where you legally bind users of your systems on the issue of privacy. We also have issues of accountability. Now, in accountability, we may decide to do so using our systems where we have, we give rights to people to say that this person is the one responsible for seeing this information and they're not allowed to share this information with anyone else. So should they do so, there will also be legal consequences. Yeah. So you may have, let's say, a system which is able to track, a transparent system which is able to track the users and their footsteps within the network, what they did and what they accessed, so that in case there's any breach, the system should be able to give proper accountability on what was done. But of course, we have to add that systems are not foolproof. We're all aware of this. Systems are not foolproof. Francis earlier talked about hacking. If somebody, at one time I was talking to somebody who was doing their postdoc research on cybersecurity, and she said, I remember she told me that as much as you try to protect a system, the person who is trying to hack just looks for one loophole, and once they're in, that is it. So we also have the third aspect, which is non-repudiation. This is where we bind someone in a contract, yeah? Contracts which are talking about privacy, that you are not allowed to share this information with anyone else or to even disclose any kind of information. I think I remember somebody gave an example in one of the classes. I don't know who it was with MTN or something, where people where the employees were asked to sign contracts of not to disclose information that they may have encountered using the company systems. So we also have guidelines. We can try to protect ourselves by placing certain guidelines to protect privacy, protect the way businesses can protect the privacy of their data. You can insist that on your network you only use sites which protect personal information. You can actually place that as part of your organizational structure. It's even been done in some countries at national level. I think China is one. Okay, I'm not saying it does it specifically for protecting data. They may use it for other political issues, but China is one nation which actually has implemented within their national backbone their citizens not to access certain sites. Of course, for this situation, for them, it could be also on a political side, but also on the side of organizations, depending on how important your data is. There are certain sites which may be blocked to prevent access to company data. You may also limit access to personal information to those who are authorized. This is where we talk about accountability, where within systems you give rights to only certain people to have access to certain information. In other situations, I'll give you an example. So in other situations, you may also state on where your data should be stored to prevent external access. So I'll give you an example. Uganda within the healthcare structure, the government stated that no healthcare data should be kept outside of the geographical boundaries of Uganda. That's one of the issues that the Uganda government put, one of the measures it put. But of course, again, this doesn't stop hackers. You know, a hacker, once they are determined, they will get in there. There's also prevention of misuse of data. Yeah, taking precaution that we don't have misuse of data, where we consider reliability of data. But then again, there's also malicious use of data. There's someone who, you may have reliable data, but someone can still insist and misuse data. Then we must also state why we are collecting data. There must be a specific purpose for why we are collecting data. For example, let me just give you an example for those of us in a university setting, which is geared towards research. Someone may collect data for research purposes. So therefore, one may state that where that data is kept, it should be off the network, so that it's only used for research purposes, so that when it's being published, only aggregated data is published. Do we know what aggregated data is?
No.
Okay. Let me give you an example of aggregated data. Let's say if I went to a healthcare facility in Uganda and I went to test for my HIV status. So let us assume when I go to this health facility today, they test me, they find that I'm HIV positive. Now, of course, they will put it on my file, on my personal file, hard copy file. Sheba has been tested positive she has tested positive for HIV. Now, on the data which is now sent to, let's say, Ministry of Health or whoever it is that collects statistics of daily tests on HIV, those who are positive, those are negative, they will not send my name. They will simply send that one patient who was tested at healthcare center X was found positive. So it will go together with all other data that on today, on which is the 14th of July, they will say maybe they tested 20 people who 20 out of the 50 who they tested, 20 were positive. So that is aggregated data. It doesn't give the name, it just gives statistics. Yeah, it just gives a statistical profile. Sarah, have you understood what I'm saying? What we mean by aggregated data?
Yes, doctor, thank you.
Yeah. So when we are talking about research, now here in research, there would be, the researcher would then be reporting on aggregated data, but not specific, saying maybe, let us say someone was doing research maybe on HIV, they won't say Sheba was found positive. They'll say out of the participants, maybe 2 participants said they were HIV positive, but it doesn't indicate that Sheba is one of them. So that is what would be published, but what would be kept would probably maybe in hard copy, which cannot be easily accessed, which can be destroyed at maybe within after a certain period of time. The other guideline we also have is to try and prevent invasion of privacy, is to try and ensure that as much as possible, if we don't need personal information, we don't get it, especially if we don't get consent. Yeah, if we can avoid as much as possible to avoid getting personal information. So, for example, if we're getting anything online, we can say that our policy is to have only aggregated data, not attached to a particular person. Then also in other situations where we say, do we really need this personal information? Is it necessary that I have this personal information? So and then also if you're getting it, you seek consent. And if you seek consent, the person should also state that I don't want this information used for anything else other than the purpose for which it was stated. So that's another way of some of the guidelines that that can be used. Verification procedures can also help in data protection. So, for example, the systems use verification procedures. So let me give you an example. If I'm accessing my bank account online and I want to transfer funds, one of the things the system will do is to send me a code to my phone, and then I'm supposed to use this code to verify that it is really me, not somebody else. That is a verification procedure. So when you have highly sensitive information which is being accessed, so you can use something like that. So within your organization, you must identify levels of privacy for the different data that you collect. This is something we shall discuss later on. There's data which we consider public, there's data which we consider private, and then highly confidential. You have different levels at which you can give data. So you give it different levels, and then you determine the guidelines you need to use to protect this data. Now, we have a specific subject of email. Email is one of the ways data privacy can be affected, especially through malware. There are situations where you find somebody receives an attachment, they tell you click on it, and then either it holds data hostage, or and you find that there are those who are maliciously targeting data. They'll say, if you want me to clean it up, you must pay me X amount of money for me to release your information. So email is one of the ways this is found, this can be targeted. Now, one of the things ICT must do is raise awareness to users, especially you have novice users among, even us ourselves, ICT, we can be novice users where we are not properly trained on things that can easily affect, can easily cause such kind of ransom on our data. So some of things like going through trainings with users, like what they should or should not open, suspicious looking attachments and things like that. Nowadays, we have increasing use of online shopping, especially after COVID-19. We have a lot of online shopping, and in that process, personal information is collected, which personal information may be misused. For example, it could be sold to a third party. We know platforms like Google, Facebook, they use, and even WhatsApp now, they use this to generate income, generate revenues. And they sell to others, and then you become a target of telemarketing, when you send information on sale of this, sale of that, simply because you maybe at one point X, you went shopping online, your personal information was collected, and this personal information was shared with a third party. So raising awareness for something like this, and also for yourself, within your organization. If you are participating in online shopping, you should be aware of the ethical elements that come with it. Yeah, some of the ethical issues that arise from things like this. And many organizations now are going online. Cookies are another way that websites collect personal information. So again, raising awareness for users, but you can also have certain technologies which prevent or disable cookies, especially within your organization. This, you can decide to install a cookie manager to help prevention of this collection of personal information. Now, the truth of the matter is ethics cannot be shied away by ICT users. Many times, especially at undergraduate level, you'd hear ICT students or IT students saying, but why are we studying ethics? And normally for ICT students, this becomes a point of disgruntle, and the students end up failing the course unit because they don't understand where the relevance of where it plays. But as we have already seen, we have a lot of ethical dilemmas that arise out of ICT. A lot of ethical dilemmas. I remember in the previous class I taught, one student gave us a testimony. I think he worked for an organization which was in, do they call it Bitcoin? I don't know, the Bitcoin technology.
Cryptocurrency.
Cryptocurrency, yes. So in cryptocurrency, and he told us, he gave us a testimony how his boss would tell him to go behind the system and manipulate the figures so that it would entice people to buy cryptocurrency. At first he did it without thinking about it, but later on when it came out that a number of people had been defrauded because of that, he told us how guilty he felt, the guilt he felt because of that. I also remember a situation that happened in an ICT department where management requested the ICT department to actual management asked them to go behind and either disable something with the certain users. And later on, when people found out about it, they were really bitter. And then, of course, the ICT department said that this came from management. So you see already, the ICT department, there are situations where you may not, it may not come from you, it may come from management. You may be asked to do something, and which later on affects others, and you may not think much about it, but already that's an ethical dilemma. Then there are others which are outright there, for looking at cybercrime, cyber fraud, identity theft, all of these, intellectual property theft. These are all things that we do without even thinking about it. Look at something as simple as, let me just stop sharing and just show you an example. Let me see if I can get it again. Okay. So you all see my screen. I've opened a Google page.
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah. So if, let's say I'm a lecturer, I want an image of ethics and ICT. Or it could even be you've been given an assignment and you're looking for images of ethics and ICT. You come in, you find any image here. Let's say I find this image. I say, I'm going to download it and use it. Okay? It seems quite simple and okay. You see this image that I've opened up?
Yes, we see it.
Yeah. But now guess what? Not all images that are here are supposed to be accessed. Some of them are actually protected. I can download them, but they're actually protected. So what's one of the things that we must do as ICT? Let me see if this is here. Let me first go back. So if I click on tools and then I say usage rights, yeah? If I say usage rights, automatically it goes to all, but what I should be looking at is Creative Commons license, meaning those images that are open to me. This one, there are some which are commercial and other which are supposed to be bought. But if I click on Creative Commons, realize the images, the number reduces. What I get are the ones which are not so attractive, but these are the ones which I have ethically, I have rights to. Okay, so I don't know if this makes sense for you to just something that small, something that small. Now imagine maybe within your organization, maybe somebody in the accounts department or in the sales department is going to make a presentation. and they simply go to Google and download an image without knowing. Okay, something like this, number one, it can give a bad image. It can actually even cause, in some situations, it can even cause certain legal issues. If you have people who are serious, it can cause some serious legal situation. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah. So those are just some simple things that ICT should be aware of, because these are things that should raise awareness to others. So one of the ways that we do enforce is to have, we must enforce ethical codes of conduct, either developing them directly or enforcing them in our ICT policy. Yes, Vincent. Hello, Vincent. Is it my network or is it Vincent's network? I can't hear him.
Yes.
Sorry, Vincent, either it's my network or it's yours.
If the image is free, there's no accessing and using it.
Sorry, I'm not getting you clearly, Vincent.
I don't know whether I need. I'm not being my. Can you?
You're breaking. I can't hear you clearly. Sorry, Vincent. Ogola, you had a question or comment?
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, class. Just a small, simple comment on ethical issues of ICT today. And if you really take the fact that I think it goes back to if you look at our work environments today, you'll find that we are working with, we have very young people in the workforce. And the kind of life we live today, it's a life of information out there through status, through the social media, the socials and all that. So I think the real bottleneck, the real issue, right? The real hurdle we have now is much as you may do all the awareness out there, but I think it has become a way of life. Simply dishing information anyhow has simply become sort of a way of life. We have young people that they've got a job and maybe they're in the server room. They want to show the world that indeed he's an ICT guru. Will take a picture maybe within the server room and not knowing that is capturing the kind of maybe infrastructure, the kind of servers that the organization is using and is displaying it out there. It's pretty much innocently, but such information could be used to harm the institution.
Yes.
So it's a very tricky thing to deal with. It has, just as I've said, sharing personal information has almost become a way of life, and it is, I think, a very huge hurdle that we have ahead. More so, if you're in ICT oversight and units like that. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Ogola. I think the point he's raising is really important. We have now a different generation that is coming to a workplace, and for them taking a selfie anywhere, anyhow, it's okay. there's literally you don't have like there are no breaks to like how much information should I really be sharing. So raising awareness is key, and having a code of conduct is extremely important. You may assume certain things now, certain things should be known, but they're actually not. They are not well known within with most employees. See, someone is in the chat group saying, my inquiry is about using an image that is free and without any restriction. Would there be any ethical issue? No, Vincent, if as long as you use an image that has been put there as Creative Commons, then it is okay. There's Vincent, you will also find with some there are people who, like, let me just give an example of publishing, academic publishing. There are people who will publish in journals where you must pay before you're given access. There are other platforms which ask you to make a request from the author to freely access an article, but they may allow you and then say, but please do not distribute. Those are all different licenses. There are also, let's say, for example, on YouTube. On YouTube, you can have, many people can create a YouTube channel, and you can upload content, and you can give people rights access to your content. Then there are other situations where you may say no, you're not giving access to anyone outside outside of an organization to have access to your content. So it all depends on under what restrictions you put. So Vincent, if you find an image that is freely available, it doesn't have restrictions, then you're allowed. But also, again, for example, I showed you the example of Google. There are situations you may be able to access an image, but in reality, you're not supposed to use it. So just whereas you can access it, you may want to, on the ethical side, on your personal ethical side, say that, you know what, I actually shouldn't have access to this image. Let me not distribute it. Or take an example of me who is an academic. I may gain access to an article through an author who has given me access but says do not distribute it. And then I decide to share it with you. Ethically, I've broken something on the academics. My conscience, that particular author may not find out, but my conscience, I may prick me saying that, you know what, you actually shared this thing. Another person, Vincent, may say, this is why we say ethics is not, it can be loosely interpreted. Another person may say that, look, I'm from a poor country, we are poor people, we can't afford to buy these articles, let me share it. Yeah. So Vincent, I hope I answer your question again. Ethics is not a one bullet solution. It can be twisted and turned wherever one wishes, so to speak. Censorship of types of information. So censorship is where we actually come out and we label our data or our information. There's certain information which is public. Take an example. Your policies may be public, and an organization may decide to say that we shall publicize our policies so that we are transparent to the public that this is these are the policies that govern us. Other people might say their audited books of accounts are public information. It should be public to X number of people. So certain information may be public. So you come out clearly and as an organization declare, and sometimes you find public information is available on the website of the organization. So take an example, I don't know if it's there now, but for the Vatican, Pope John Paul II decided to make the accounts, the book of account, the accounts of the Vatican public, to know exactly how much money, what revenues come in, what revenues go out, and so on and so forth. So that was a decision he made as the pontiff of that time. I don't know if they are public now, but that was something that was that they made a decision to make public. So an organization can decide to say this information is public. So it's even made available on the website and so on and so forth. So other information may be considered private. So this one, which is censored, you decide this is how it should be kept. And normally we look to the national policy or the national law. What is the legal status within Uganda? What is considered personal? What is considered private information? And then there's also information that may be posted by a person. And this is where Ogola's question comes in, where someone may decide to say, oh, this is my personal thing. I'm posting to my friends on Facebook and so on and so forth, and Instagram. That is personal information, but they may decide to do it within the organizational framework. So this is where you may decide to say we censor any kind of information that may be done within the organization that may affect the image of the organization. So censorship, what we're doing is basically restricting access on the web, yeah? Restricting access on the web. So we may decide to censor what information within the organization can be accessed. So for example, an organization may say, we don't want pornography to be accessed within a certain time. We don't want social media sites to be accessed within working hours. And then it has also, like we already gave the example, there are some countries which have done so at a national level. Think places like China, Singapore, so on and so forth, which prevent or restrict their citizens from accessing certain information over the web. So that is also can be done. Now, there are also those which are done at home, where parents prevent their children from accessing certain sites which they deem shouldn't be seen by children who are underage. That's what censorship is. Intellectual property right, we have already touched on this subject. We already know what it is. There are certain things which are covered by legally, yeah. So certain data may be protected as intellectual property right. We've also seen other things like licenses, like Microsoft Office, and so on and so forth. They are protected by trademarks and trade licenses, copyrights. So all these are things to take note of that you should bear in mind as ICTs, as heads of ICT. So there are categories of intellectual property rights. You have industrial property rights. So simple things like a logo, yeah. Your logo may be easily accessed on the website, and someone can download it and copy it, yeah. So those are certain things, or trademarks. So within your organization, you must know which are the industrial properties that shouldn't be designed, that shouldn't be copied by others. Then you have copyrighted material. I give you the example of images which are copyrighted, documents, and so other kinds of materials, other online kinds of materials that you may not want to be accessed, and you may want to protect while they are on the website. So these intellectual property protections, you can identify them with marks. For example, there could be hidden marks that prevent one from using another organization from using them. And then we also have patents. So the patents, we all know what these are, what patents are. They also protect intellectual property rights. So the reason why people get patents is, for example, a generation of revenues. For example, like Microsoft. Microsoft has patents to its softwares that it produces. So that's one of them. The other is for research and development. Certain research attracts funding. And if everyone is going to do it, that funding can be easily taken away from you. So especially also in research, we also have patents in research. Then also to protect our markets, our market segments. Yeah, if we're trying to, if people know UMU, and UMU has a certain niche market, but anyone can simply get up and get UMU's logo like we have here, that can automatically affect the market segment. So things like that. Or if I can easily go and get the logo, let's say, of Harvard University, and I start teaching as a Harvard lecturer, passing myself off as a Harvard lecturer. So things like that affect patent rights. But so as ICT, you must know how to protect. Yes, Sarah. Question or comment?
Doctor, it's a question.
Yes, please.
For example, I'm an alumni of Uganda Matters, and I would love to use Uganda Matters University's logo. Maybe I get a logo, I have my office somewhere. Do I have to first ask for permission in order to use it? Or it is just okay since I'm an alumni?
Now, that depends on if UMU has a protection of this kind of data. Yeah, so it depends on if UMU has any kind of protection on this kind of data. Sarah, I hope I've answered your question. So essentially what we're saying is the organization, you as ICT, together with management, must work on codes of conduct and also certain restrictions, have certain restrictions to protect certain industrial and intellectual property rights. Yeah, you should have it. Those restrictions must be there either legally, also in terms of ICT. There are certain things that where you should put restrictions. For example, there are certain kinds of data where you might say it can only be accessed within the intraweb, within the private network of the organization. But again, these are all restrictions that you must think about, and there must be, those are things that are discussed within the organization, and then you label what censorship should we put, and then how we're going to put this censorship, and then you go ahead and put that censorship. So we also have laws that cover software piracy. We have most of these, we know about them. And you can also go ahead and look at Uganda's laws, what copyright laws we have in Uganda. Please go ahead and look at those. But these are things that I'm sure most of you know about. We also have things like cyber squatting. Do you know what cyber squatting is? Where someone may decide to take over somebody else's domain name. Yeah, you decide to take over somebody's, for example, if I decide to take over, have the Harvard domain name, I create Micah University there, I decide to take over the Harvard domain name, and I am directing all traffic to myself, and maybe sell some course, some made up course here and there. So it's basically hijacking a certain URL, basically hijacking. Those are just some of the ethical issues that we encounter in ICT. The digital divide, I have touched upon this. This normally occurs in the haves and have-nots, in the third world and between the first world and the third world. We now know it's now considered a human right to have access to information. So to have access to information, we're basically talking about information technology, because now most information is now digital. If information is digital and I don't have access to ICT, then we have an ethical dilemma, because I don't have access to something that I have a right to. So we are now seeing that there's an increasing of funding for computers in schools, or getting schools online, Certain public, certain sectors are being supported, for example, like healthcare, to gain access to ICT, and so on and so forth. And then you also have the other ethical arguments which state that, you know what, for these multinational organizations like Microsoft, which are charging licenses, they're actually increasing on the digital divide. Yeah. Do we have any questions so far? Now, in the workplace, I think this would stem directly from the example Gola gave us. We are seeing now in the workplace new jobs being created because of social media and so on and so forth. We also have people who are now doing telecommuting. Like an example, now I'm teaching you from my home, in the space of my home. You may also be either at your workplace or at home. And while you're at home, an image of your child may come up. You may accidentally put on your camera, and we record an image of your child. I think there were stories during lockdown where there was a man who was giving an interview, and his children came into the room where he was giving an interview, and of course he had to quickly, the wife had to quickly come in and take the children out. But yeah, it's a situation like that. The nature of our jobs now are bringing a new areas where anything can easily happen. Of course, we are doing it now to reduce on costs, on production costs, on service costs. But this is now the impact of ICT in the workplace. This is what is happening. We now have virtual organizations. So now with virtual organizations, we have an increased situation of ethical dilemmas can be easily encountered. Now, when we also see things like now IA coming in, we have an increased sense, or we should have a more heightened sense of the ethical dilemmas that come with these new technologies. Now, you can look at this slide to see the drawbacks of telecommuting, the benefits that may come in, but also think about the ICT elements that may come in as well. Now, also ICT is coming into healthcare, okay? ICT is coming into, it also has some health issues that may come in, and all of these, they can also be considered as an ethical, or as something of, may cause some ethical dilemmas. So just like, for example, I'm a tea farmer, and as a tea farmer, I use herbicides. So if I use herbicides as the tea farmer, I should be aware of the health issues that can arise out of using herbicides. So also, when we're introducing ICT, we should also be aware of health issues that may arise from using ICT, and then raising awareness. For example, our sitting postures, what it may do to our arms, and things like that. And other situations that may arise. For example, there are people who talk about things which are not yet ascertained. For example, if I use the mic, the phone, the radio, the radio frequencies could they have caused maybe tumors and so on and so forth. So, and then also vision, how will my eyesight be affected, and so on and so forth. So we must be aware. They may seem like really small issues, but you never know. With a highly digitalized society, you never know, someone can get up and sue your organization and say, nobody ever told me about this. Yeah, nobody ever told me that if I use the computer too much, it may affect my eyesight, and so on and so forth. So just being aware and being up to date with some of the health issues that may arise from using ICT, and raising awareness, and probably also having a disclaimer, or putting it as part of your ICT the acceptable use policy, that I will not sue this organization because I've lost my eyesight or my backbone is now affected or something like that. We now also have the issue of green computing. So we are using these devices within the organization, but we're not taking note of how we dispose of them. Now, I am aware that there may be some organizations which come in to dispose of obsolete devices, and they are supposed to dispose of them ethically or in a more sustainable manner. So this may be one of the things you may want to include in your ICT policy, yeah, on how you dispose of your computers, your servers, and so on and so forth. Some organizations decide to give them as charity, but again, it looks like you're dumping what is supposed to be for disposal to someone who is poor. Should we put it that way? And also that may also cause another ethical dilemma. What are some of the ways to achieve green computing? Designing products that last longer, which in business terms is not desirable. All organizations now want to produce something whose lifespan is shorter to keep revenues flowing. So ethically, this may be an ethical thing, but in terms of profits, this is not why many organizations come into play. Having a system that is not easily replaced, that can be upgraded easily without replacing it. But then again, in terms of profits, this may not be acceptable. So designing search engines and computing routines that are faster, that consume less energy. This could be one of the, I think this one is achievable. Most people want to say that they are being environmentally sustainable. Yeah. Replace underutilized smaller servers with a larger one. So that you have less equipment to dispose of. So I'm seeing there were some questions here about, okay. Then using computing devices that consume less energy, and even we also go ahead and do so in our different homes and not just at the workplace. So key terms that we want to keep note of: acceptable use policy, where we have a code of conduct which people actually sign and agree to. Having systems that are accountable, that where you can trace the users and the activities they were doing within a system. Cookies, trying to look at how to prevent cookies, especially within the organization. Cyber squatting and the digital divide. All these are things that you should take note of as ICT professions, as you're looking at the ethical elements within your policies. Do you have any questions or comments?
Thank you, Doctor. I needed a more knowledge on cyber squatting with a relevant example here in Uganda.
Yes.
Thank you.
Pardon? You want me to give an example?
Yes, of cyber squatting or even the class.
Maybe somebody in the class may know, may know about it. I haven't seen a live example. Yes, Richard, maybe you have an example?
Yeah, thank you so much, Doctor. Yeah, maybe an example I can give here is these domains that we register for organizations and companies expire after some time. So if an organization is credible, there are people with bad intention outside there who are waiting for them to expire. So that in case you don't renew in time, they renew it on your behalf and they take it over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, thank
So that
you.
in case you need to get it back, you pay expensively.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so sort of like hijacking, and
Yeah.
it's a
It's
hijack. Eh?
hijacking.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Richard, for that example.
You're welcome, Doctor.
Thank you, Richard. I think it's perfect.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Do we have any other question or comment? Any other question or comment? No? Okay. So I'm going to assume silence means consent, or there is a hand up. Yes, Giles.
Yes, thank you, Doctor. Yes, my concern is about the notes. I've not been seeing lecture notes on Moodle.
Really?
I don't know if yes.
Is that the case? Hold on a minute.
I know I saw the introduction, but the preceding ones I have not seen.
Give me a minute. Let me log in and see. Because if I remember,
Notes are there, Jules.
I remember I put up all the slides.
The notes are there.
Let me. Okay, let me just share my screen. So if you check, Giles,
Yes.
You have lecture slides for introduction, ethical theories.
Yes.
You also have the resume recording. So the only one I'm left with is to upload for today. And then I think I'm also just done uploading the Zoom recording for last week. I should share it with Emma by end of this lecture. Then for the one for today, I should be able to share it tomorrow morning. So
these are Zoom recordings.
The Zoom recordings plus the lecture slides. If I open this one, ethical theories, you have all three lecture slides are here, plus their Zoom recordings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
so if you
it's
can.
now clear.
Okay.
I appreciate for the clarification.
Okay. So let me just stop sharing. So today I should be able to share with Emma for last week's recording, and then also share with him tomorrow for today's recording. So tomorrow I'm going to put up a quiz and then also the final assessment, which is a take home.
What time?
I should be able to do this by 10 a.m.
Okay, that will be great.
Doctor, how long will the quiz run? How long will it be open?
I'll leave it open for a week.
Okay.
Okay. Any other question?
So we have another quiz, or we also have a lecture tomorrow?
No, tomorrow we don't have a lecture. Today is the last lecture.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Okay, Doctor, if I may.
Yes, please.
No, for me, really, I think during the last lecture, I'll just give a vote of thanks for the way you've handled this session. It seemed far-fetched. I kept thinking now ICT, I mean, from the beginning, I was thinking now ICT, then ethics. It really didn't make sense before venturing into the details.
Yes.
But it seemed too off, if I may say. But I think when we sum up all the sessions we've had, it is quite eye-opening, and as you've stressed, it's not really something cast on stone, but giving you a wide spectrum of things to guide your thought process as you handle whatever it is, whatever situation that you're faced with. So I think you have done justice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ogola. Thank you for that appreciation. I really hope it was the same for everyone. And I think that's primarily why I was also placed in this. Previously, there was somebody from ethics, and students were not having, ICT students were not having a good time in this particular course unit. It was completely out of it. So when that faculty found out I had done it for my first degree, I said, oh, quickly, let's put her there. So I hope it was the same for everyone. I really tried in that aspect.
Yeah, I think personally, I think it was an eye opener. It's a fact checker for someone. Like, beside being professional, there are other things you need to follow. You may take them for granted, but you can either lose your career or you probably even lose your job.
Yeah.
So without ethics, I think we were just like robots. But now after this lecture, you feel like there are certain things you need to put into practice, either to protect your soul and also to protect the organization. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that appreciation. I think I'll wish you all a very good weekend and maybe see you for another course unit if we have another together.